So there was this news reporter one time doing a story on family farms, and he went out doing a tour on the farm and interviewing the old farmer that owned the farm. And this farm had been in this farmer's family for 5 or 6 generations. So this guy had been tailing his farmer around, asking him all kinds of questions about the farm, and the farmer was showing him, well, yeah, this is the same house that we've lived in for 4 generations. My great 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 whatever grandfather built it, hewed it out of the land, and this barn was built just a few years later, and we still, these fields and all this stuff's been in the family for generations. And this tractor that we use, my grandfather bought it new, and we keep it in good shape, change the oil on it and all this stuff. And so this young fellow was really amazed at how well care they took of all this stuff and how all these things in this farm had been in the family for generations. The farmer was cutting a little wood for the wood stove in the house. The reporter said, it's just amazing that all this stuff that you kept such good care of it has been in your family for generations. He said, I bet that axe you're using there to split wood with has been in your family for generations too. And the old farmer, he looked at the guy kind of sideways and said, yep, this axe has been in my family for generations. And the reporter says, well, yeah, it looks like it's just about brand new. He said, how do you keep it in such good care? And the old farmer looked at him and said, well, about every 2 years we replace the handle, and about every 6 years we replace the head. Well, that's kind of the way it is with these airplanes. This airplane was built in 1957, makes it 65 years old. As far as I know, this wing is the wing that it came out of the factory with. Now, this airplane was rebuilt by a company in central Washington. In fact, now they build their own airplane that's basically a copy of a Cub, as well as some other models that are very similar to it. But they were pretty well known for restoring and rebuilding Cubs. I bought this from them. It's what's it been, 22 years ago now. Now, after about 15 years of using that old airframe in salt water, it rusted out on the lower end of it, and it could have been repaired, but it was more cost effective to replace the fuselage than it was to try to repair it. So I replaced the fuselage in it. I built that myself because I wanted it built to last forever in the salt environment. And these planes are not made for lasting forever, and they weren't built for being in the salt environment. So anyway, I built that fuselage and replaced it, but I didn't do anything with the wings. So as far as I know, these wings are the original wings that were on that airplane. And the company I bought the airplane from did a little bit of work on it. Of course, it was recovered with a new fabric covering on it, but I can see underneath the covering that they did some work to it. There's some doublers in on some of the ribs. Of course, they added in a cap strip on the wing spars to increase the gross weight of the airplane. There's a few of the leading edges on the front of the wing that were probably dinged up beyond repair that have been replaced. But otherwise, it was pretty much the way that it came out of the factory 65 years ago. And you can see it wasn't built to be operated in a saltwater environment. In the desert environment or dry country environment, this thing would do just fine, but in the salt air, see, there's no corrosion proofing, there's no paint, no primer or anything else on any of this, on the wing struts or on the spars, except for some of the wing skins that have been replaced. There's nothing on any of the wing skins. I can see the outboard ribs out there have some zinc chromate on them. Most of this is all just bare metal. Now, I knew that I needed to recover the wing because the strings in here that hold the fabric down to the ribs was broken, and we had to put new strings in there, new tie-down strings. There was a lot of pecker holes in it from the crows and stuff pecking on it. And I'm coming up to the point in my life where I'm going to be selling this airplane, so it's worth a lot more if the wings are recovered than if it is just the way it was. That was one of the reasons for recovering it. I couldn't see any damage internally or anything on the wing from inspection it, but I suspected that there was some rust in it. I decided to look at it, and I'm glad I did now. This thing is filthy dirty inside, which it wouldn't be from just operating here in the environment that I operate in, because there's over water all the time, and this is not a dusty or dirty environment around here. We don't get any volcanic ash or no dust storms or anything like that. Summer times there's no dust in the air, very little dust in the air. It's not operated off a dirt strip or anything like that, so there's no reason for it to be dirty except that it wasn't cleaned up the last time it was put together. But it's also showing its age. So I started looking it over and seeing some things that need to be done to it. One of the things that's going to need to be done is I'm going to need to clean it all up, and that's going to take a lot of scrubbing. So I'm probably going to get some detergent in a bucket and Scotch-Brite pad and start washing this thing down, and then we'll scrub it with some acetone to get all the old paint and stuff like that off of it. There's going to be some places where there's some corrosion that needs to be cleaned up, although I don't really see any yet. Nothing serious anyway. I had a little bit of corrosion down there on the tip of the spars where the wingtip bow was attached, but that came right off with a little bit of scrubbing. I just took this trailing edge false spar off here off the fuel tank bay. This is one of the hinges for the flap, and I could see once I got to looking that there was some rust in there, and rust where it attaches onto that wing spar. Well, of course, you get rust in steel against aluminum, and that's going to create hell with the aluminum. And then there's straps that attach here to the wing spar that the fuel tank lays on, and then it holds it down, and they were rusty around in places, so I wanted to get those cleaned up. Well, I'm glad that I opened that up, because while this spar is still in good shape, it was on its way to start having some corrosion in here. If I let it go a little bit longer, then it would have necessitated replacing the wing. But I could see where replacing, if you were having somebody else work on the airplane, replacement might be the most cost-effective method, because to work on this right, the way that it needs to be worked on, is going to take a lot of time and a lot of elbow grease. By the time you start paying somebody $150 an hour or $200 an hour shop time to start doing things like scrubbing and cleanup work, corrosion control and stuff like that, you can get into one of these for a pretty big penny. So anyway, that's what I'm going to do here, is I'm going to clean this up. I've started here from the butt end, the inboard end of the wing. Actually, I started on the outboard end because I took the wing bow off. Checking that area out first. I've got to replace the wing bow. But now I've come to the inboard end and I'm starting on it. I've taken off the leading edge cover and the false spar here off the back. There are some nut plates in here in this trailing edge in this false spar, and I can see some of them are starting to rust. They're getting rusty, so I'll probably replace those. This flap hinge is held on to the false spar here by some rivets here, so I'm going to take those rivets out, and I'll take that hinge, clean it up, sandblast it, and repaint it with some powder coat. So this is the bell crank here for the flap, and that can stand to be cleaned up too, so I'll take it. It actually doesn't look too bad, but this bracket that attaches it to the spar is starting to show some rust pretty good. And then all the hardware was just starting to show rust. So we'll clean all that stuff up and get it powder coated and painted. Now this thing is all held together with the little teeny number 4 1/4-inch long PK screws, and originally they would have been straight slotted screws, but these are Phillips head, so they've been replaced. These came out pretty good for the most part. I had to grind one of them out, and what I do is I just grind a slit in the top of it here. That usually heats it up enough, and then I can put a slotted screwdriver, a flat screwdriver in there and unscrew it. This false spar is got a bend in it here that goes over main spar, and that's screwed into it with a B-type PK screw. It's got a blunt tip on it. That's still a number 4 1/4-inch. They have a real small Phillips head indentation opening in them, so I had a heck of a time with those. I couldn't get them to come out to start with, so I took some penetrating fluid and just sprayed on all of those and let them soak overnight. Instead of using the impact driver, I used a drill because it doesn't have near as much force. You can get it to spin slower, so it won't cam out as bad in these Phillips head screws. Well, anyway, I was able to get most of those out like that, and there was a few of them that I had to take the Dremel tool with a cutting head on it and just put a slot in them and take them out with a slotted screwdriver or a standard screwdriver. we'll get on to this, do some cleanup work on it. I'll get these down, get these sandblasted, cleaned up and powder coated, and replace some of this hardware that needs to be replaced as it starts getting rusty. You can see this bracket here, this bell crank for this flat bracket is not moving, it's not pivoting inside this bracket like it should. Anyway, we'll get that stuff cleaned up and taken care of, and those hanger straps for the fuel tank. And I'm just going to do this a little bit at a time. I haven't seen any reason to disassemble the wing yet. As long as I don't take out those drag wires and anti-drag wires and stuff, the wing should maintain its squareness. You want it to be square, and it should maintain that as long as I don't disassemble any of those flying wires in there, any of those drag wires or anti-drag wires. So I do this a little bit at a time. Do this bay, and then I'll do the next one, put this one together. And there might be some sheet metal in here that I need to replace. I don't know, we'll see when we get to it, but we're capable of doing that. And then of course, as we get everything cleaned up and sandblasted, we'll be able to analyze it a little bit closer and see if it actually needs any parts that need to be replaced. Well, I'm glad I decided to do one wing at a time instead of doing both wings at the same time, because this is going to take, I figured it was going to take some time anyway, because I have to teach myself how to put the fabric on the wing. I've done the fuselage before, and I've done control surfaces before and stuff, but this will be the first wing I've covered, so I knew I was going to need time for that. But this is going to take a lot more time getting all these little parts and pieces cleaned up, and all of this cleanup work that needs to be done. Going to make it take more time than I had anticipated. So anyway, we've got time to do it, and we've got a place to do it.